Once more with their backs against the wall. In a situation that should have been completely unwinnable, the Indiana Pacers have done it again. I said it back in Game 1 of their recent series against the New York Knicks, after they again pulled off a bizarre voodoo-magic-level comeback win, and even then, it felt like it was supernatural and how it shouldn't have happened. But now, after doing a similar thing in every round so far in these playoffs, it feels like something else is going on here than just luck. This is just who they are, and somehow it keeps working. Looking back at my notes during Game 1, the Thunder had a lead as large as 15 with 9 minutes to go in the fourth, and that should have been the dagger. But then Indiana embarked on a 12-2 run with 6 minutes to go, and it made me think, surely they're not about to do it again. And for a minute there, it looked like they weren't, because Oklahoma City quickly tightened the screws and were able to regain full control of the game, thanks to SGA doing exactly what an MVP should do in these big moments. And for a minute, it genuinely felt like it was over. With 3 minutes left, Oklahoma City was in a really solid spot. The Thunder were up 8 points. They were playing with the composure once again, getting some timely stops on defense and scoring back the other way. But then Indiana did it again. They went on a flurry that might have just shifted the course of NBA history and has completely reset the tone of these finals. With just 3 minutes and 7 seconds to go, Oklahoma City led by 8 points. But somehow, the Pacers stole it. First, Pascal Siakam calmly makes 2 at the line. Then Aaron Nesmith knocks down a brutal on-the-move corner 3 that felt like it had no business going through. But even before that, Miles Turner had topped him with a step-back 3 from the corner that banked in off the glass. And if I wasn't already convinced that there was actually some kind of voodoo magic going on, I certainly was now. Still, it wasn't just luck down the stretch. It was guts, belief, and some absolutely massive shot making. The play that truly cracked the game wide open came from the most unlikely hero, Andrew Nembhard. With the game on the line, he isolates against the league MVP and drills a mammoth step-back 3 from the top of the key. A stone-cold shot that felt bigger than the moment itself. Then, in what felt like a rare misstep, Nembhard again decided to go into isolation at the top of the key, but this time he airballs. However, because of their voodoo magic they practiced before the game, the ball perfectly lands in the hands of Siakam, who's able to flip it back up and in off the offensive board. Just like that, it's a 1-point game with a minute to go, as somehow Indiana turns an airball into 2 points. Then, the entire narrative of the two stars in this series changed. Leading into this series, and at halftime, people were saying Tyrese Halliburton has to be more aggressive, and how SGA came out in this game and was being as aggressive as you'd want him to be, meeting the moment. And for the entire game, up until the final 2 possessions, that narrative was true. However, it all crumbled in an instant. SGA had the ball in his hands and a chance to extend the lead to 3 points. He got to his spot and pulled up for his patented 14-foot fadeaway jumper, but this time he missed it. That miss allowed Indiana to do what they love to do, and that is get out and run. No timeout, no hesitation, just pure instinct and trust. Halliburton finds his spot, steps into a really tough mid-range jumper, and buries it. The shot, the swagger, and the silence he then brought to the crowd was a classic NBA Finals moment. That was such a gutsy call from Coach Rick Carlisle as well, not to use the final timeout. But that is just how the Pacers play. They do not panic. They trust their system, their tempo, and most importantly, their stars to execute. It's becoming a defining trait of this team. They rarely stop the flow late in games, and once again, that decision paid off. That Halliburton dagger was Indiana's first lead of the entire game. Let that sink in. Not only had they been playing from behind for a full 47 minutes, but they also started the game horribly with a jaw-dropping 18 turnovers in the first half, the most any team has recorded in any half this season, both regular season and postseason. But the Thunder did not capitalize. That was the difference. Despite Indiana coughing up the ball 18 times in the first half, OKC managed just 9 9 points off those giveaways. And if there's one thing you absolutely can't do against this Pacers team, it's leave the door open. The Bucks learned it, the Cavs learned it, and the Knicks definitely learned it. If you do not bury Indiana when you have the chance, they will find a way to come back and win. That is just who they are, and it's suddenly why we have a series on our hands. To start game 1, Oklahoma City made a noticeable adjustment before the ball had even been tipped, replacing Isaiah Hartenstein with Cason Wallace in the starting 5. It was a move that I predicted in my preview video for the series, aimed specifically at slowing down Indiana's transition game, and early on it worked. OKC came out firing on both ends of the floor, jumping out to a 7-0 lead while doing exactly what they needed to do, keeping the Pacers from getting out and running, which is where they are at their best. The tone of the game was also set early. It was incredibly physical, and the officials were letting plays slide on both ends. But that early control from OKC didn't last long. Indiana did respond well, tying the game at 10 with some key buckets from Pascal Siakam, and getting into a play that they love to do. A quick push in transition to a swing to the corner, where the 3 was then made from Andrew Nembhard. Still, their sloppiness caught up to them. 9 first quarter turnovers was simply too much to overcome, and they then trailed by 9 points after 1. There was a moment caught on ESPN's Wide Up segment where you could hear Tyrese Halliburton talking to a coach on the bench, saying that he felt like he was giving up the ball too easily and that the team was just playing a little bit too quickly. They needed to slow things down even just a little bit, and from there, it felt like Indiana adjusted. They didn't win the second quarter, but they were able to hold their own, only getting outscored by 3 points. And then in the second half, they completely turned the game around, outscoring Oklahoma City 66-53. In my notes, I wrote that Indiana would be content with being down only 9 points after how poorly they played in that first quarter, as despite the turnovers, it felt like the Thunder had left the door wide open. A really dangerous thing to do against this Pacers team. It felt like a classic Game 1 feel-out scenario. One of those games where the opponent hasn't fully experienced the pace, rhythm, and creativity of Indiana's offense. And that's often when Indiana is the most dangerous. They learned quickly about how different this Thunder defense is compared to what they were just up against in the previous rounds. The looks they were used to getting against New York were simply not there. OKC was swarming, their rotations were far sharper, their length was a problem, and their speed closed off windows a lot faster. That's how OKC forced a team that's usually elite at taking care of the ball into 9 first quarter turnovers. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander came into this game with a clear objective: be as aggressive as possible. He took 11 shots in the first quarter and then had 18 field goal attempts by halftime. It looked like he was on track for 40, though he would only finish the game with 30. I noted that this was both a good and a bad thing for the Thunder. It showed off the aggression you love to see from SGA, as he was controlling the game offensively early, but it also hinted at a looming problem. The others weren't involved. And as it turned out, the Thunder needed more than just 38 points from SGA in Game 1, because although his 38 points on 46% shooting was simply brilliant, there was not a consistent second option behind him. If you had told me before the game that Lou Dort would be OKC's second best offensive contributor with 15 points on 5 of 9 from 3, I would have said they were in trouble, and they were. Because one of the biggest questions coming into this series was who would step up as Oklahoma City's secondary star, Jalen Williams or Chet Holmgren. In this game, neither did. They combined for just 23 points on 8 of 28 shooting. Simply not even close to being good enough. And even though I thought early on that the Thunder might escape with the win just because of how bad Indiana was playing, that lack of support eventually caught up to the team. For me, one moment that stood out as a potential turning point in this game came in the third term, when Benedict Mathurin came up with a massive block on Jalen Williams. It felt like that play injected a fresh wave of belief into the Pacers and sparked the team. Indiana then closed the third with a strong run, which could have been a bigger momentum shift if it wasn't for SGA bearing a tough 3 to win that term, giving the Thunder a 9-point buffer. Still, the push Indiana made was not meaningless, because because it helped them come back into the game later on. And just like I've said countless times this postseason, this fourth quarter from Indiana was something else, as it might go down as one of the best quarters in franchise history. They outscored the Thunder 35-25 in the final frame, flipping the game on its head with a 10-point swing. As I mentioned earlier, they were learning, and fast, as Indiana was quickly discovering what they could and could not get away with against this OKC defense. As the one thing Oklahoma's defense does give up are some opportunities in corner threes. It took the Pacers a while to start making them, but once they did, it became a real reliable weapon. Indiana ended the game shooting a scorching 46% from deep, knocking down 18 of 39 from beyond the arc. But even with all of that, Oklahoma City still had a 15-point lead with 9:27 to go. But Indiana refused to go away. Down 8 with 7:44 to go, they would then charge back into the game, launching the first of two massive runs. The first one, the 12-2 push, was capped off by two massive plays from Miles Turner. First, the incredible banked-in three from the corner, and then a smooth on-the-go mid-range jumper off the catch. That sequence set the tone for the closing minutes, a moment that would eventually be sealed once again by Tyrese Halliburton, stepping up as Indiana's hero in the clutch. This was a game of adjustments, a game of learning, and a game of momentum swings. And yet again, Indiana found a way to win it. While it's always a team effort with Indiana, it's Tyrese Halliburton who will always deliver the kill shot. All season long, he's been borderline automatic in these moments. He's now a staggering 14 of 16 on shots inside the final 2 minutes of a game, including overtime, that either tie the game or give the Pacers the lead. On those 16 shots, he scored 34 points. 4 of these clutch time daggers have came in these playoffs. That isn't just clutch, that is historically great. It's time we start acknowledging that this guy might actually be one of the most clutch players we've ever seen. Although the narrative hanging over him is that he's not that kind of a scorer and his jump shot looks very unconventional. But every time the game is on the line, he's able to rip it out of the jaws of defeat and puts it in Indiana's column. Now, coming into this series, there were 5 key questions that I had on my mind, and Game 1 gave us some real insight to each of them. The first was whether or not Indiana could avoid the turnover bug. In this game, they didn't. They coughed it up 24 times. But what was remarkable was how Oklahoma City turned those 24 turnovers into just 11 points. That is certainly a missed opportunity, and something the Thunder will have to clean up if they want to flip the series. The second question was whether or not Oklahoma City would continue to run their double big lineup, and we got the answer before tip-off. They completely got rid of it, not even for a single minute in this one. The third question was whether or not anybody could slow down SGA. The answer was a firm no. He poured in 38 points, but the thing was, he needed 30 shots to get there, and that leads us into the fourth question. Could anybody else step up for the Thunder offensively? The answer to that question was again no. Neither Jalen Williams nor Chet Holmgren delivered as secondary scorers like Oklahoma City needs them to, leaving SGA to carry the full offensive load basically by himself. Then the fifth and final question was about pace. Which team would be able to dictate the tempo in these games? Both teams love to run, but in this game, they both managed to keep each other's fast break game relatively low. OKC managed just 11 fast break points and Indiana just 10. But in the second half, it was those in-between semi-transition looks where Indiana really started to tilt things in their favor. So in Game 1, I would say Indiana won the pace battle. All of this now leads us to what's shaping up to be an absolutely massive Game 2. And it isn't an elimination game, but spiritually, it kind of is. If OKC drops both games at home and then heads to Indiana down 2-0, they are going to be in serious trouble. Just ask the Knicks. Just ask the Cavs. That is not a place you want to go to because Indiana loves to feed off that environment, and when they go on those runs in that building, it is genuinely incredibly overwhelming. Indiana doesn't lose grip, and they pretty much never let go of the rope. So now it's on Oklahoma City to wrestle back control and keep this incredible season alive in Game 2, because if they don't, they might be watching a celebration instead of having one. And if you need a refresher on all of the big questions and marquee matchups matchups coming into this series, along with what to expect, what matters, and my overall series prediction, then you can check out that full breakdown right now.